Hello, guys. Good morning. It's Jessie, and I am here to provide you our first lesson for real estate appointment setting. So, basically, at the end of this video, you would be able to know the different types of real estate appointment settings and what are the terminologies used, the common terminologies that you will encounter once you start appointment setting for realtors or real estate investors. Again, my name is Jazzy Lozada and I am from Telecrew Outsourcing. This is just one part of the um, few trainings that I'll be providing for real estate appointment setting. So, I wanted to share with you my experiences and my knowledge about real estate appointment setting, and I guess I wouldn't be able to cover all of that in just one lesson, so I am providing you series of lessons so at least you wouldn't be bombarded with a lot of information. So, um, real estate appointment setting. What is real estate appointment setting? So basically, in my own words, this is the process of generating quality leads for a real estate agent, broker, investor, wholesaler, or wholesalers through cold calling and follow up. So basically, this is when you are going to be hired as a cold caller to reach out to different people and offer services of your client, which is most likely a real estate agent, a broker, an investor, or a wholesaler. So, what is the difference of these people? So, a real estate broker is someone with a license to operate um, and handle different realtors. So, a broker is someone that most likely has an office and is working with a couple of realtors and they are all licensed and he is also licensed to handle these people. Okay, so basically he's the boss. And an agent, a real estate agent, is someone that has a license to either sell or um, to either help someone sell a property or buy a property. So basically, a real estate agent is someone that would be offering services to either a home buyer or a homeowner, okay, that's looking to sell the property, okay? And they would have to get a license for that. Investor, so an investor is someone you don't really have to have a license. I think with the people that I've worked with the clients that I've worked with different investors, and I don't think that you really have to have a license to be an investor. I think you have to have money and connections to people that has money in order for you to be an investor. So basically, from the word itself, as you know, real estate investor is someone that is leaning towards getting profit from his um, ventures through real estate. Now, a wholesaler, I think, is someone that is like a middleman, right? So he doesn't have the funds or he doesn't have the money, but he has the connection to real estate investors. So for example, I am a wholesaler. I am going to call different people that are looking to sell their property, and I'll make sure that these are cheap buys, and then I'm going to refer them to my clients that are that has money. And basically, I would seem like I have the money for to buy the property, but really I don't. Okay, and just to basically I'm gonna go ahead and refer this to my clients that are real estate investors that has money. So that's the way I see it. Okay, so a broker, an agent, investor, and a wholesaler. So these are the people that you're most likely to work with if you start being a freelancer or a caller for real estate. Okay, now appointment setting with realtors slash brokers. All right, so basically I'm going to give you we're going to dig deeper into appointment setting for realtors and brokers. So at least you would have an idea. So if you are going to set an appointment for a realtor or a broker, so this is going to be the same for both of them, you will either set a listing appointment or a buyer appointment. All right, so what's the difference? So if you are going to set an appointment, if you are going to set a listing appointment, you will be calling homeowners. So you will be calling, cold calling different phone numbers, all right, and most likely you are going to, not most likely, y- all of the time you are going to look for the owner of the property. Um, so basically, these owners, all right, are the ones that are looking to sell their property. Sometimes you're not going to be calling a person that's looking to sell the property. You're going to call a person to ask if they have any plans to sell the property, right? Bottom line is you will be calling home owners. And I'll tell you more about um, different types of calls and different types of leads for listing appointments in a different video. Next, so yeah, like I mentioned, you would be calling sellers here. All right, so if you are going to set an appointment, you are looking for sellers. You are looking for someone that owns a house and is looking to sell that property or the house, okay? Um, the commission is usually 6%. So, of course, these realtors are offering their services in exchange of getting a commission for it. So, um, normally the commission is 6%. It could be lower, it could be higher depending on the state or depending on the realtor and maybe depending on the negotiation between the owner and the realtor. All right, but standard is, I think, is 6% of the total amount of the property. So for example, if the house costs $100,000 and the 6% of that is what, $6,000. So if I'm the realtor, I'm going to be getting the $6,000 after I was able to successfully sell the property. Okay, so yeah, um, that's why there's a lot of realtors. That's why I always say that working for a realtor or working in real estate, like real estate, what do I call this? Working in a real estate business is actually good for someone that's doing freelancing, because in real estate you would encounter a lot of long-term clients and a clients that would be able to pay for resources. The very challenge when you are working from home is you are going to, like, the challenge of finding someone that could keep you for a long time, and you wouldn't have to jump from one job to another, right? So that's the very challenge of it, and you don't like that. And I mean, that's going to take away the security and the assurance that you are going to earn this specific amount of money next week or next month, and you have bills. So with my client right now, I have been with my client for what, 4 years now, all right, and he's a real estate broker, and that is why I always recommend to people that they target the real estate industry, so that they would also get the opportunity of working with someone that could give him long time opportunity, and of course a competitive per hour rate. Okay, so that's it. Listing appointment, you are going to call homeowners that are looking to sell the property, and these people are going to be open to paying commission to the realtor. It has an asterisk here because it doesn't necessarily have to be uh 6%, but that's what's normally being paid. All right, so that's one part of your job. And the other part of your job, if you are appointment setting for a realtor or a broker, is you would also be doing a buyer appointment. All right, so when you are calling someone, uh, you may or may not, these people may or may not own a home. Well, okay, so basically, you could be talking to people that are first time home buyers. All right, they wouldn't have to sell a property, they just want to buy a property, or you may also talk to someone that is looking to sell their property and also buy another one. Okay, so basically what you're targeting in a buyer appointment are buyers, not just buyers but pre-approved buyers. I'll tell you more about that later. So these are people that are looking to buy properties, and the commission here is usually 3%. So if I'm a realtor and I am representing a buyer, and that buyer successfully buys a property and everything goes well, I would be getting a commission also for representing that buyer, which is usually 3%. Again, this is not fixed. This would still be depending on the different factors like the state or the agent and the negotiation between the agent and the buyer. All right. So that's the difference. So these are the two appointments that you will be making for a realtor or a broker. It could be either listing appointment or a buyer appointment. Now, one big difference here is for a listing appointment, you are gonna most likely um, do cold calling or outbound calling. All right, and for a buyer appointment, you may also be doing outbound calling, but most of the time, some clients would have leads that are incoming. It could be from online sources. So we're going to talk about that more in a different video. I'm just giving you a gist of it. And also, clients would love to have more listing appointments. All right, coming from an an inside sales associate or ISA. That's what you are going to be called when you work for them. Um, coming from an ISA, because it gives them more money. See, they're getting 6% if you were going to give them a listing appointment, and they would only be getting 3% if you're going to give them a buyer appointment, unless that buyer appointment is also a listing appointment and and the buyer has a home as well that they would be selling, right? So, yeah, because they'll be getting commission on both sides. I know it's a bit confusing and I'm getting too excited, but please take note that you don't really have to overthink, because these information would be tackled more in my next training. Okay? Now, next, appointment setting with investor and wholesaler. So with investor and wholesaler, so these are two different people. Like I said, investor are the ones that have the money. Wholesaler are like middlemen contacting the sellers, and then at the same time they are in contact with buyers or with the people that are really going to buy the property. They have the money, right? Now, homeowners. Um, these people that you are going to be calling for, if you are going to be calling for an investor, are of course homeowners, but they could be um, living at that property. They could be having that property as a rental. They could be having that property as a vacant property. All right. So that's what's going to happen. You're going to be calling these homeowners, and I'll tell you more about this in our next video for investors. But bottom line, if you're going to be calling for an investor, you are looking for a cheap buy. Of course, these are investors. They want to get profit out of the sale of the property. So um, they wouldn't be able to do that if they're going to be buying the house or the property for a higher price and then sell it for a higher price, right? So they want to get a property for a cheap buy and then sell it for a higher price. So flip home and fixer upper. So if you are going to be calling for an investor, you are going to be most likely targeting flip home or fixer upper. What is a flip home or a fixer upper? These are properties that are damaged, properties that are not in good condition, properties that would need TLC. So this is what you're targeting. Why? Because if I own a house that's a fixer upper or a flip home, then I wouldn't I wouldn't be asking for too much, right? So if the value of the property is $100,000 and someone is buying it for $50,000, and I'm not really doing anything on that property, I'm not I'm not renting it out. It's just sitting there as an extra property, and they pay taxes for these properties, right? Every year. So, I mean, I'm not getting anything out of it. I'm spending money for it. So why not sell it? And it's damaged, and I'm too lazy to fix it. It's gonna cost me money to fix it. So why not just sell it? And if someone comes to them and offers a low and give him a low ball offer, it wouldn't matter, right? So that's why if you are gonna be working for an investor, these clients would want you to find a flip home or a fixer upper. How are you gonna find it? It's like a needle in a haystack, right? So they are gonna be providing you a bunch of phone numbers and a bunch of leads that you'll be calling, and you're just gonna be calling these people, and will ask them about their properties if they're looking to sell it, and you'll know more about it when you're already there. But it's not very hard, right? Because they'll be providing you with all the resources you need. It's just really hit or miss. It will be tackled in my own different video. I'm getting too excited again. So, um, yeah, so for this one, for investors, it's either they are going to resell it or rent it out. So when you say flip home or fixer upper, after they buy it for a cheap price, they will be investing money to fix it up and make it look beautiful. And then once that is done, they could either rent it out or they could resell it to people. They would be listing it, or they will be putting it online for other people to see. And of course, they will be selling it for a much higher price. Okay? Now, let's go to the wholesaler. So, for wholesalers, you are going to call homeowners and buyers. Why do we have um, another word here? Buyers. So buyers are the real investors here. Okay. So when you are a wholesaler, you will also be calling. You will be calling two sides. Um, the homeowners, which is the bunch of phone numbers that will be provided to call if they're interested to sell a property, and you would also be calling a bunch of buyers. So these are the buyers that are technically your investors, and they have the money to pay for, for whatever property you got from the homeowner list. All right. Now, cheap buyer. So basically, just like the other one, your wholesaler client is looking for a cheap buy, or something that they could purchase for a half price or even lower, right? Something that they would get profit of. And same thing with the other one, it should be a flip home or a fixer upper. And like I said earlier, most likely a wholesaler is a middleman, right? So that's the gist of it for appointment setting with investor and a wholesaler. So basically, compared to the other one, with if you were gonna ask me which one's better, if it's calling for an investor, or or a broker or a realtor, it depends, right? Um, it really depends, because if you are the type of person who doesn't really like challenges, then might as well go with the investor and wholesaler. Why? Because with that one, you would be calling a bunch of numbers, and you will ask them if they're interested in selling their property at ABC 123 Main Street, right? And if they say they're not, then you can let it go. And then, find another one. So it's just calling, hit or miss, right? Until you find someone that's interested to sell. With calling for a realtor, calling for a broker, you have a specific script that you will be following, that realtors and are also using, that's very effective in order for you to um, get the root cause of why they're not selling, and eventually can convince them, or make them realize that they they would they're better off selling, right? So I'll tell you more about it. So, as for me, it's I have chosen working for a realtor because, like I said, it's long term. They have their money, right? And these are trained salespeople, right? So when you set an appointment for these people, they would most likely close it, because these are trained salespeople. And I love the challenge. It makes me, working from home, it's kind of boring, and it makes me alive working for a realtor, because I get to practice skills, you know, gives me value, right? So now we're going to talk about terminologies. So these are the words and their meaning that you will most likely encounter when calling out. So let's begin with MLS. So MLS is a multiple listing service, is a marketing database set up by a group of cooperating real estate brokers to provide accurate and structured data about properties for sale. It's also a mechanism for listing brokers to offer compensation to buyer brokers who bring buyers for their listed properties. So don't get don't over don't overthink. MLS is just a website where a licensed realtor would go in and see every properties listed in a specific area, right? So it's where, if I'm a realtor, it's where I'll be posting my property that I am selling, right? So the other realtors can see it. So other realtors that are assisting buyers can see it. Okay? If I'm a buyer agent, if I'm assisting a buyer, then I'm gonna go into MLS and look at different properties so I can see the contact information of the realtor that's selling it. And that's where everybody meets. Okay? Next, appraisal. In order to get a loan from a bank to buy a home, you first need to get the home appraised so the bank can be sure they are lending the correct amount of money. The appraiser will determine the value of the home based on on an examination of the property itself, as well as the sale price of comparable homes in the area. So basically, an appraisal is just basically an evaluation from a professional, right? So before someone can get um, a loan from the bank, right, then you would have to have an appraisal for the property. Just like here in the Philippines, when I got the when I got the house, I already have been before I got approved. Someone would have to go to that property and assess it and make sure that the property is what it's worth, right? So we are going to have our own evaluation also, and based on our evaluation, that's what we'll be using to provide to identify the type of loan that we're going to provide you. So for example, if the owner or if the owner of the house says my house is worth $300,000, right? And I am a buyer and I want to buy that property. So I would ask the bank to loan me $300,000. Now the bank will have to go to that property and check it and see if it's really worth 300,000. If it's not, if I find out that the property is only worth 280, then I would only give 280 to the buyer. Then you would have to come up with the other with the difference, you know, somewhere else. Yeah, because we're not going to give it to you because the house isn't worth 300. So that's it. Buyer's agent. So this is the agent who represents the buyer in the home buying process. On the other side is a listing agent who represents the seller. So self-explanatory. So buyer's agent is someone that's assisting the buyer. Okay. Closing. The closing refers to the meeting that takes place when the sale of the property is finalized. At the closing, buyers and sellers sign the final documents and the buyer makes the down payment and pays closing costs. So basically, closing is when the selling process is over, right? So when you hear someone saying we are closing on the property tomorrow. We're going to close on the property next month. So this is already a done deal, right? Because sometimes things fall through, not everything goes through. So whenever someone makes an offer, it does not necessarily mean that it would absolutely be 100% a sale already. Right? So when they say it's already closing, that means everything is good and they're just waiting for that meeting to take place to finalize everything. So this is when the buyers and sellers meet and make the down payment and closing costs. So unlike here in the Philippines, it's not really common that the buyer and the sellers are doing it direct. It's either through a developer and pag-ibig or through uh, a developer and a bank. So you don't really have someone that, you set meeting with in person. So with this one, with in the US, it's very common that the owner is selling the property directly and they're talking to the buyer. There's no developer. The owner of the house is selling it, right? So that's it. When they say closing, it means closing. It means the end of the process of selling the property. So that's a good news for a seller if they are already going to close on a home. Okay. Comparative market analysis. Comparative market analysis is a report on comparable homes in the area that is used to derive an accurate value of the home in question. So, comparative market analysis is when you compare different houses, different properties to the house that someone is selling. So, for example, if I'm selling a property, I would need someone to provide me a comparative market analysis. That person would look for different houses that is similar to my house in order to come up with a appropriate price for it. Unlike the appraisal, what's the difference between appraisal and comparative market analysis? Appraisal is the final price because that's the one coming from the bank, right? So that's the final thing because if you're a buyer, then that's what you're going to be looking at. A comparative market analysis, the person doing this can be a realtor, or even you can do a comparative market analysis if you're a seller. Anyone can do a comparative market analysis basically, as long as you know how to. You don't have to have a license to do it. But when you say appraisal, it has to be a licensed appraiser to do that uh, process. Contingencies. So this term refers to conditions that have to be met in order for the purchase of a home to be finalized. So when you say contingencies, that is like it depends on this factor. That's the way I could explain it. So for example, when someone says my house is contingent to when I am going to be buying another one, so that means that I won't be able to, even if you already made me an offer on the house, but I haven't found another house yet, I won't be able to officially sell it to you, right? So for example, there may be contingencies that the loan must be approved or the appraised value must be near the final sale price. So that's quite confusing. So when you say contingency, these are the factors that might affect the sale of the property or the deal, right? So contingency, that means that you would have to wait for this specific thing to happen to finally close a deal. So for example, I say that my house, that the sale of my house is contingent to when my job is finally starting over at a different state. So for example, I marketed my house in March, but and someone buys it in April, but I can't move yet until May. So the house is contingent to when I am able to move. If you have questions, you can just send me a message, but that's the best way I'd explain it. Equity. So equity is what you have on the house. So, for example, you bought the house for $500,000 and then you've already paid $200,000 in it. So that's your equity, right? Your equity on this property is $200,000. So you still owe $300,000 in it. Okay? So, yeah. So the whatever you owe, that's what you call mortgage. Inspection. So, yeah, inspections are required once a potential buyer makes an offer. Typically, they cost a few $100s. The purpose is to check that the house's plumbing, foundation, appliances, and other features are up to code. So, basically, in order for you to, this is one of the reasons why a house sale may fall through because they did not pass inspection. Unlike here in the Philippines, where anyone can sell a property, anyone can sell a house, it doesn't really matter. Um, in the US, you have to pass a specific standard for properties for houses. So you gotta make sure that these doesn't have molds or these are livable. They have different bunch of criteria, and you have to pass that. You have to make sure the house is presentable, right? So they would check everything. As an owner of the house, you would have to pay for the inspection. And if they find something wrong with that house, they wouldn't let the sale to go through unless you fix that property, or you say goodbye to your buyer and that buyer finds another home. Next, listing. So listing is just a home for sale. So if I'm a realtor, that's the term that you would, if you're calling for a realtor, that's a term that you would always hear every day. Listing. So when they say, I've already listed my house with another realtor, that means they are already working with another realtor. When I started, I thought that they were saying lifted. So my notes were lifted, but I was wrong. It's listed. So a listing is essentially a home that is for sale. So when they say listing, they've already listed it on the MLS. Because remember, MLS is multi-listing service. That's why they got it from. So, um, so it will be official that the property is already marketed on the MLS, and they're saying it's listed or listing. So yeah, that's when a property is already for sale. A listing agent. So like I said earlier, this agent represents sellers in the home buying process. So the other one is a buyer's agent and the other one is a listing agent. Mortgage broker. Mortgage broker. The broker is an individual or a company that is responsible for taking care of all aspects of the deal between borrowers and lenders, whether that be originating the loan or placing it with a funding source such as a bank. So basically, the mortgage broker is someone that would be assisting the both parties. So, sorry, I mean, that will be assisting the buyer and so the borrower, which is the buyer, and the lender as well. All right. So basically, this person is in charge of helping out the buyer and get them connected to the lender, which is normally a bank. There are private lenders, but it's most likely bank that's going to lend the buyers money. Offer. So obviously, this is an offer from a buyer to a seller. The seller may accept the offer or reject it. So basically, this is your first attempt to give him the price that you wanted for a specific property. Same as whenever you were selling anything, if ever the owner does not like your offer, then you would try to counter offer it and see if they would take it. So yeah. Pre-approval letter. So before buying a home, a buyer can obtain a pre-approval letter from a bank, which provides an estimate on how much the bank will lend that person. This letter will help determine what the buyer can afford. So pre-approval letter is something that you would hear a lot also, especially if you are going to call for a realtor, because um, this is what buyers obtain whenever they are going to be buying a property. It's very helpful because then that means they didn't waste time. They're not wasting time. That they know that they can be approved because there are buyers that are looking for properties. They've already shown a lot of properties, but after they find the one that they like, they would find out that they couldn't afford it or that the bank wouldn't be able to give them the loan for it. So it was just a waste of time. So getting a pre-approval letter before you start looking at properties is a lot better. Principal. The principal is the amount of money borrowed to purchase a home. Paying off the principal allows the buyer to build equity in a home. Principal is combined with interest to determine the monthly mortgage payment. So principal, self-explanatory, this is the amount of money borrowed from the bank or from the lender that you have to pay. Real estate agent or a real estate agent is a professional with real estate license who works under a broker and assists both buyers and sellers in the home buying process. So self-explanatory again. Real estate agent is someone that has a license. This license might also be what do you call that? Revoked if you did not follow the rules. They have certain rules that if you get reported, same with other licenses, you would get your license revoked or it's gonna be invalid. Um, one of the reason I know is that if someone is already committed with a realtor, right? You can no longer convince that person to go to you or to offer your services. Not at all. Don't attempt, because then your realtor might get reported. So if you're going to work with a realtor, make sure that if you're calling out and if the person or if the lead says, I'm already listed with another agent, or I've already signed with another realtor, let it go. Real estate broker. A real estate broker is a real estate agent who has passed a state broker's exam and met a minimum number of transactions. These brokers are able to work on their own or hire their own agents. So basically, brokers, when you say brokers, they could be and they are also real estate agents. The thing is, they could hire real estate agents as a team. Okay, so and you have to have a license for that, and you have to have a certain amount of transaction or property sold, or the total transaction that you have, even the ones that you help buy. You have to have specific amount of money, or I mean amount of successful transaction in your track record in order for you to pass it. Realtor. A realtor is a real estate agent who specifically is a member of National Association of Realtors. NAR has a code of standards and ethics that members must adhere to. So realtor and real estate agent are almost the same, except that a realtor um, is a real estate agent who specifically is a member of National Association of Realtors. So not all real estate agents are realtors. Confusing, right? So basically, a real estate agent has a license, and a realtor is a real estate agent that is part of the National Associations of Realtors. So yeah, that's it. Refinancing. Refinancing is when you structure your home loan, replacing your old loan with an entirely a new loan that has different rates and payment structures. The main reason people refinance their home, it's because to get a lower interest rate on their mortgage, and therefore lower not only the monthly payment but also the overall debt owed. So remember earlier I told you about the equity. So for example, I own a house for $500,000 and I have already paid $200,000. And some of them are selling the property because they no longer can afford it and they want to buy a cheaper one. Instead of doing that, they would rather refinance, meaning they would approach the lender and recompute the remaining principal so that it would be lower. It has a lower interest rate, and then it has a what do you call this? It has a lower monthly fee as well, right? When someone tells you, you will encounter this also all the time. Someone telling you, no, I'm not selling anymore because I've already refinanced. Then if they just recently did that, you couldn't do anything anymore because they just refinanced. So what you're gonna do is just to let it go and call him back maybe a year or two, um, because that's the option that they did instead of selling the property or getting money out of the sale of the property. You know, a lot easier. I mean, it usually happens when someone really loves the home or the area where they live and they really cannot go. So instead of selling, they opted to refinance. So yeah, so that's the end of our web training session lesson 1. I hope you like it and I hope that you learned from it, and I'm looking forward to having you in my next video or my next lesson. What we are going to do in lesson 2, we are going to learn more about appointment setting for realtors. Listing, we are going to know more about listing and buyer appointments, and we're going to know more about type of leads that you are going to call, and we're going to learn more about the scripts. Now, the next lesson, I don't think that everything will be covered in one lesson, and but I'll make sure that whichever way I go, that you will be learning a lot from it. Thank you for watching the video, and I hope to see you again in my next lesson. Have a great day. Bye bye.